Hello, my name is Daria Orlowska. I'm the data librarian at Western Michigan University, and welcome to my workshop on qualitative research tools, TechEt 101. You may find the slides at the bottom at tinyurl.com/wmu-TechEt, and also all the materials we'll be going through today. So today we're going to be talking about TechEt, which is an open source tool for uh, coding your qualitative text. And this workshop is not about how to code or how to actually do your qualitative analyses. Instead, it's going to focus on some tips like with organization and also how to actually use the software to get you started. So at the end of this workshop, you should be able to define what qualitative research means. So I'm going to assume that we have no previous knowledge and we're just going to talk a little bit about the difference between quantitative research and qualitative research. We're going to talk about data management in qualitative research, and I will give you some tips as to how best to maybe organize your project files or things to consider as you're moving along this journey. We're going to talk about how to access TechEt and how to import documents into the software. We will also discuss how to implement and merge codes when you actually import your documents into TechEt. And finally, we will discuss exporting codes for analysis. So TechEt is great for going into the platform and doing all your codes. However, it does not offer any analysis capabilities, and so we really have to export that. We will do that within Excel. You can use whatever tool you are most comfortable with, but for the purposes of this demonstration, it is going to happen in Excel. And I will try to show you some ways that you can work with Excel to get at the codes that you have done. This workshop is not about, like I said, how to actually do qualitative research. It is also not about developing your research variables or your research questions. So if you have questions about your research questions, I would strongly suggest you reach out to your subject liaison to help you get started with that. If you are trying to figure out your project needs or figuring out what your research variables are or setting up your documents, I have another workshop that I offer from time to time. There's also a recording on YouTube called Preparing for Projects with Data Workflows. So feel free to check that out. That will walk you step by step through those things. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to let me know and we can address those. So if you either raise your hand or type things into chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with, I will respond or I will repeat your question and then we will go from there. So without further ado, let's get started. So qualitative research overview. What is qualitative research? So qualitative research is unstructured, inductive reasoning, and exploratory. Those are some things that come to mind when we think about it. Specifically, it is data representing information and concepts not represented by numbers, and it answers the questions of why and how. So the types that you might be familiar with are observation, so what you see and record, experiences, so reflecting upon something that might have happened to you, and also physical or digital items could be considered qualitative. Examples of this that people have done research on are free responses and open-ended questions within surveys. So maybe you've done a survey in SurveyMonkey or in Qualtrics, and you have a question which is like, within this free response text or box, write your thoughts about this or give me feedback on this. And those are all qualitative fields. You might have a lab notebook or observational field notes. Those are all qualitative. They might be structured in some ways, but you write it out and it might not follow the same structure every single time, or it just might be a longer response. You might have interview or focus group transcriptions, personal diaries or manuscript text, or photographs, images, videos, or audio. All of those are qualitative research or can be example of qualitative research. Sometimes the boundaries between qualitative and quantitative research can get a little bit fuzzy, but for the most part, for the purposes of this workshop, this is the definition we're operating with. Whereas quantitative research, on the other hand, is structured, it is deductive reasoning, it's confirmatory. So specifically, data represented numerically, including anything that can be counted, measured, or given a numerical value. So it typically answers the question, what, how much, and how often. And the way that you will see this kind of data represented oftentimes is discrete, which is just a number, continuous, so maybe like over the course of years, or categorical, which is grouping things based on categories. So for categorical, for example, you might have a Likert scale that goes from 1 to 6, and it could be like not at all, neutral, or agree very much, and those are categorical. Or you could have categories of people. So you could ask who is responding to the survey, and you'll have something like students, faculty, staff. Those are all categorical as well. So the way that we typically see quantitative research is surveys, especially if you can categorize them and translate them into numbers. Polls and census data is also a really good one. You have experiments, so people can look at something and measure it. Same with measurements, assigning a numerical value to something, and aggregated statistics. Aggregated statistics kind of goes back to the census. So if you're asking the question of like how many individuals live in this city, or how many individuals make an income between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. Those are aggregated statistics because they're not raw numbers. It's usually, it will give you a number of individuals, or it gives you people who fall into those categories. If you are doing both qualitative and quantitative research, you are doing mixed methods. If you are taking your qualitative research and you are transforming into quantitative through data coding, that is that transformation. You are putting numerical values to something that typically does not have numerical values. You could do that by the way that we're going to be working with TechEt, where you look at text, you find trends that you would like to code for, and then maybe you change those codes into numbers, and then you can see the differences between groups, between issues, between manuscripts, whatever you're looking at. So, like I said, this isn't a workshop teaching you how to do your coding or any sort of strategy revolving around qualitative research. However, I've compiled some resources for you if that is something that you need assistance with. So, a lot of these are through maybe some other software. So, like Atlas TI has free self-guided documents. Through like the city training, there is a paid course, the ICPSR summer program, which is a program from the Interconsortium for Social and Political Research. They have courses during the summer that are typically paid. However, there are scholarships that are available. Those are offered either in person in Ann Arbor or virtually. LinkedIn Learning, if you are part of the Kalamazoo community and you have a library card, you should be able to access LinkedIn Learning. It was previously called lynda.com, if you're familiar with that. If you're not part of the Kalamazoo community, maybe you have a public library card with some other public library consortium, they might have access to LinkedIn Learning for you as well. And then here are some other YouTube videos that I thought were interesting that give a good overview. These should all be free for your viewing, and it just basically goes over research methods specifically. I've also compiled some resources about from physical materials that we have here in the libraries that you can check out at any point. Though the first one, I guess it is online, it is not physical. A lot of these are specific to tools, but some of them are more general as well. So if you are more of a, I will follow a book or look at a book to get some information, you can feel free to check these out. There is one of the guides, using software in qualitative research, a step-by-step guide, has some affiliated websites specific to software. So if you're interested in using something besides TAGAT, such as NVivo or MaxQDA or Atlas TI, feel free to check that resource out. But today, we will specifically be using TAGAT. So what is TAGAT? TAGAT is a free and open source tool for qualitative research. It allows you to work locally if you have sensitive information and you don't want to put it on a server where someone else has access to it. You can keep it as secure as your device by keeping it on your device, so nothing gets shared outside of your device. Or you can work online to collaborate with colleagues. That will require you to put your information onto a server, so probably de-identifying it first. However, that allows you to work on the same coding with other people at the same time. TAGAT is pretty low level in terms of learning curve and in terms of skills that you need to get started with it. You pretty much just go ahead and sign in, and then you can start importing whatever materials you need. And you can just click and drag to highlight. So it's pretty easy to get started with that. It's pretty easy to import tags. So if you have used previous software and if you previously have used other software and you found that it was a little bit difficult getting started, or maybe you are trying to work with a colleague who hasn't used qualitative software in the past, or with students, this could be a really good place to get started. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this workshop, TAGAT is great because it's free, it's open source, it's pretty easy to use, it's pretty bare bones. However, you can't actually do anything with the results within the platform. You have to export the results out, and we will talk about integrating that with Excel at the end of this workshop. So before we get started with the demonstration part of this workshop, I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about the differences between different software. So as you see on the left-hand side, that is TAGAT. It's the only one that's open source. All the other ones that I have listed, NVivo, Atlas TI, MaxQDA, and Deduce, are paid, but have some sort of trial associated with them. So if you find that you get started with TAGAT, but then you want to take advantage of some of those capabilities of other software, you might then go and transfer your information to that other software and use it for that limited time so you don't actually have to pay for it. Because I know that some of these subscriptions get pretty expensive. The TAGAT serves all the different systems, Mac, Windows, and Linux. You can store data locally or on a server. You can see that it's similar for some other pieces of software. The security is as secure as your computer for TAGAT, like we talked about, if you use it locally. If you're using it online, you will have to de-identify things first, whereas other software have more protections, either GDPR, which is the European protections, or HIPAA, which is working with sensitive patient information. Backup is only going to be done if you're on the server. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it manually. It varies for the other different software. Collaboration is online, and it is one of the only programs other than Deduce where you can collaborate directly to people at the same time. The other software only allows you to merge projects together, but maybe not collaborate in tandem. As you see, like I said, TAGAT very bare bones, doesn't offer any transcription, doesn't offer any analysis or visualization, where some of the other pieces of software have something like auto coding. So you put in a word of things that you're interested in, and it will code things automatically for you. Or inter-rater reliability. So if you have multiple raters, are you on the same page with them? As you see, we have NVivo highlighted, and that's because we do have a subscription to NVivo as part of Western Michigan University. So if you are interested in using the software and you don't want to pay for a subscription, feel free to come to the library. We have 2 computers that have the software on there and are readily available for anyone who wants to use it. I will talk about that next. At the next slide. There is also a comparison guide I've linked below. I kind of tried to recreate it here, but feel free to check out other resources as well. And I've also highlighted some additional resources specifically for the other pieces of software that we've already talked about in the previous slide that are available for you if you decide that you want to use other pieces of software in conjunction with TAGAT. So NVivo is located on the 2nd floor. There's 2 stations right outside the restrooms. You can see I've included a map on the left-hand side of the screen and then a picture circling those 2 stations. They have a piece of paper as you approach next to the monitors being like, this is an NVivo station. So feel free to come visit us at the libraries and check those out if that's something that you would like to do. Okay. So I am a data librarian, and I would be remiss not to talk to you about data management before we get started with the demonstration. So very quickly, feel free to humor me and just listen and think about like, what's one thing that I can incorporate from these tips into my future or current project? So the first thing I want to talk to you about is naming files thoughtfully. So thinking about a file structure that is distinguishable from other projects, which is short but easily understood. So when we say distinguishable from other projects, what we mean here is if for some reason your files get mixed up or moved all of a sudden to a different folder, would you be able to know where they belong just by looking at the names? So think about that. Like, what are the pieces of information that will make it distinct from other projects? You might also want to consider establishing information importance for sorting and creating a controlled vocabulary for consistency. So what is the most important piece of information that you would like to sort on? I typically sort on day, so the date specifically, because I find that that's the most important thing for me, followed by maybe like the name of the thing I'm working on, or they like slides versus data. So really, when you're thinking about information, what is the importance? The most important piece of information to the least important. They technically should all be important, right? Because you're putting them in the file name. If they're not important, don't put them in the file name. But being consistent with yourself, so coming up with what do I want this to look like for all my files so that it makes it really easy for you to find things later on without second guessing yourself. And finally, consider adopting naming practices like writing dates such as year, 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 month, month, day, day. The reason you would want to write it that way is because it sorts super easily. Year changes the least amount, followed by month, followed by day. So it will always be in order. And then avoiding special characters. So special characters like periods or dollar signs or ampersands, anything, question marks, which is why we typically use dashes and so like hyphens or underscores. And we avoid spaces as well for the most part because some software doesn't play well with special characters when you import your information into it. So here I have an example of a TAGAT project in the past where we have this example of a file name. It's 1966-10-13 underscore V01-N01. And this is specifically from an issue of the Western Activist, which was a student-run magazine or a newspaper from the late 1960s, early 1970s. It was like a countercultural newspaper run by students talking about issues that they felt were not being addressed at the university. So this gives us a lot of information already, right? It gives us the date that the issue was published, it gives us the volume and the number of the issue, all important things. However, how is the information in the name sorted? You have it sorted on date, great, followed by volume, followed by number. Is the name distinguishable from other projects? Like, do you have other projects that also follow this convention? If you were to take this file and move it somewhere else on your computer, would you know that it belonged to the Western Activist? Is the name legible and easily understood? Is it short, right? Is it not going to max out all your characters? Is there room for multiple files or like with versioning? So we can see here that we made a decision to put volume 01 instead of volume 1. And the reason for that is that sometimes the volumes go past 10. And in order for it to sort nicely, you have to have 01, 02, all the way up to 10 in order to avoid 10 being sorted before a number such as 2 or 3. And if you decide to do versioning manually, you might also do another underscore and have like 01, for example, for versioning. You could also do versioning automatically by using something like OneDrive or Google Drive to put your files into the cloud, and then you'll have access to all the versions. And do you need a file structure to improve organization, especially within a folder? So looking at this, the way that we named this file, it could actually be renamed for clarity. We can change it to include the words Western Activist, because maybe it's not super clear if we found this out in the wild or out of context outside the folder we originally put it in, to know what it actually belonged to. So adding the Western Activist just there, we used camel case, as you see, that's putting Western, no space, just activist with an uppercase A right next to it, gives it that clarity. Standardizing file structure. So the other thing that you might want to consider is how to structure the files for consistency and clarity. You may find that you're transcribing interviews or you're putting manuscript information into a document and then you want to compare. How are you keeping those things consistent? How are you cleaning them, right? This is especially important for things that are OCR'd, so that's optical character recognized. So documents that were originally an image and then were run through software, and they try to make those words actually words instead of just an image. How should the documents be structured to make them easy to read and to analyze? For interview transcription, what style guides or decisions are being used for consistency across interviews? And what guides are you using for something like anonymization to de-identify something before you actually begin analysis? I've included 2 links if you're dealing with interviews or transcriptions to help you get started. And I've also given you an example from a previous project last summer with my summer intern working on the Western Activist. We actually developed this plain text setup document that helps us make sure that all of our plain text documents follow the same style so that they're very consistent and easy to go through when you're doing the analysis. And we've documented all our decisions, so anything that kind of like anything that you're doing, you're putting down. So especially if you're working with more than one person, but maybe if you're working over time and you're leaving the project for a while, that you always have something to refer to and like look through when you're making these decisions. And finally, creating documentations. So creating structures to track progress to avoid missing files or steps. So on the left-hand side there, I've given another example from the summer internship where we had progress tracking for Western activist. We wrote down the issue, we hyperlinked to it. We said, how many pages are part of this issue? How long is it going to take to get through it? Were there any images that we had to take into account because we were creating plain text documents? Was the OCR conducted? And then was that file checked? Was the plain text document imported into Taget? Or imported into Google Drive and then imported into Taget? Did someone check the typos? Did someone check the tagging? So we kept track of things that way. You might find that you have a slightly different form that you would like to adopt or different structure, whatever works for you. There is no right or wrong way to do things. There is oftentimes just the decision to do things or not do things. And I would encourage you not to rely too heavily on your brain to remember all the things that you need to do, because you may find that you don't remember to do these. We often think that we can remember all the things, when in reality, it helps to offload that information into a document that you can access. So writing down processes and decisions made, make sure that there is consistency in action across time for all involved parties, whether that is you and another person, you and people trying to reuse your information, or just your future self in the future. Writing down information about variables and code tagging, when to tag and what that tag means, enables consistency and understanding across time for all involved parties. So there's another example right below the progress tracking one. This is how we handled looking at the codes. After we've coded everything within Taget, we exported that file into, I think, Google Drive, Google Sheets. You can export it into Excel. And we went and looked at the overarching theme and how things were tagged. We looked at how many things were tagged this way, and then we made a decision about whether we wanted to keep that coding tag, whether we wanted to merge it with something else or transform it or change the definition. So this was like a great conversation to have, and I would encourage you to do that as well. So documentation is enough information about the thing and the materials so that it is maintainable over time with access to it and is valuable to those who need it. So think about these things, like what can you start doing with your own project? Even if you are in the middle of your project, can you start now? And so you don't have to go back and try to remember the actions you took in the past. Okay, we've come to the demonstration part, what you've all been waiting for. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to get started by accessing Taget. So this is my project right here. However, if you are getting started, you might find that you need to actually log in. So in order to do that, you can go to taget.org. Taget spelled like baguette, but with a T. Or you can go ahead and Google it if that helps you find it more easily, and you will find that you land on this website. Then you will go to try it out. You will get to this welcome screen. It will tell you a little bit about Taget, and then you will press login. From here, if you don't have an account already, you will have to go into register, and then you can go ahead and put in your login, your password, confirm your password, your email, and then press register. So once you do that, you will find yourself back on this homepage. It will have your ID, and then it will list off all your projects that you're working on. So I've already used Taget for a number of projects, so I have a number of files. You probably, if you have just registered, will find a blank screen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. We're going to name it Sample Research Study. And I'm going to just put a description. This is a sample of how to use Taget. I'm going to go ahead and press create. And here we are. Here's the dashboard of Taget. It is very simple, right? There's not a lot of things going on, but let's go through it together. So right now, we are in the Documents tab. You can see it's highlighted, and nothing is loaded right here because we haven't imported any documents. So there's no documents in this project yet. We can add documents here. On the left-hand tab, we have the name of our project that we can change at any point. We have the descriptions that we can change at any point. Here's also where you manage collaborators. So when you click on that, you can go and if you have someone's username, you can put it in right here, and you can change what their permissions are, and you can add them to the project. You can also make changes about what you have, like what your permissions are, and you can choose to leave a project. If this is your personal project and you're not collaborating with anyone, maybe don't leave your project, maybe don't change your permissions, but otherwise you can add people here. This page also allows you to export the project, which we will talk about in just a second. Export a codebook, which is any definitions you have assigned to your tags. Import a codebook, so maybe you've already created tags and definitions for them, and then you can just import them here, or you can delete your project. And then the last tab is the Highlights tab. This will tell you what your codes are, right? Where all your tags are. So if you've imported a code book, you will see here. We will also work on adding codes to our documents. You can see the default is just interesting and they have 0 tags because we don't have any documents and we didn't tag anything yet. So going back to the export project, you might decide that you want to do this as part of version control, especially right before you make some big changes, or maybe you want to give this to a collaborator, or you want to merge information together, or move to a different device and still have access to your project. This is a good way to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add documents. You can find all the documents for this tutorial in this tiny URL that I had shared with you before. And the tiny URL will take you to this Google Drive that says Taget with a number of files. So go to tinyurl.com/wmu-taget, and it will take you right here. What we're interested in downloading is these first 2 text files, the .txt files. If you have sorted it in Z2A, they will appear on top. It will say 1966-10-13 and 1966-10-20. These are the 2 we're interested in downloading. We're also interested in downloading this file if you want to download it now, or we can download it a little bit later in the demonstration. This is a SQLite 3 file. Okay, so once you've done this and saved it into a place that you can easily access and find, we're going to go ahead and start adding documents. Once you click Add a Document, you get this window that pops up, and from here we can choose the files we're interested in. I have a folder saved on my desktop with all the downloaded information, and I'm going to click on this first one, 1966-10-13, to get started. I'm going to click Open. As you can see here, it has the file chosen, and I clicked on it and it unchosed the file. Let's do that again. And then I can click on Import without putting any additional information. So what that does is if you don't change the name of your file, it will just go with what the default is. And then I can just click Edit at any point and I can change the file name. So maybe I don't want the extension, I can just go ahead and remove it. And I can put a description here at any point as well to give me some more information about the file. I don't have that many files in this demonstration, so I'm not going to bother with a description. However, maybe you have like an interview, for example, interview 1, interview 2, interview 3, and if at a glance might be really difficult to know what those interviews contain, and maybe you have some description like this is an interview with a nurse about her time working at a hospital versus this is an interview with a student with their experience attending classes at this university to help you differentiate some of them. Then I can save and close to go ahead and apply those changes. And we're going to do the same thing with the next text document. So add a document, choose the file. I'm choosing the second file, 1966-10-20. And I'm opening it and I'm importing it again. And I'm going to press edit and I'm going to get rid of this file extension because I don't want it. And I'm going to save and close. Okay. And so now you can see that whichever files we select, we have the entire text of this file, right? We have like a title, and this is, like I said, part of a newspaper. And so you have articles and the text for each article. So now what we can do is we can just start adding codes. I've already kind of given you a sneak peek of that because what happens is if you click and drag, it prompts you to add a code. So let's say that we are making tags about any reference to students, right? So I click down here and then I drag to any point that I want to, and then I can click new highlight. From here, the only tag we have to choose from right now is interesting. So we're going to have to create a tag. So maybe we create a tag called students, and the description could be any tag involving or mentioning maybe students. And we can save and close. And then we see that the one that we added is already checked. And then we can save and close, and it will highlight that text for us. We can see what we've highlighted by like hovering over it. You can see students, or you can click on it, it will show you the tag. You might also decide to tag it as something else. So like double tag it. You can choose interesting, save and close. Now you hover over it, you see students interesting. If you click on it, it's been tagged. You could untag it as well here. And so we can do this again further down in the document. Let's see. She made it right here on the concerned selection of the student body. So we can say students. And maybe we can go into the next document as well. And we can say, okay, any mention of Western Michigan University. Let's add a new highlight, create a tag, WMU, any mention of Western Michigan University, save and close, save and close. Okay, so that's how you've created tags, right? Pretty easy. So now if we navigate over to highlights, we can see that we have tags for students, for WMU, and for interesting. The preview, however, is only showing the actual file that we looked at last. So in order to see our highlights, we have to go ahead and select See All Highlights, and then it will tell you the text that you highlighted. It will tell you what document it refers to or what document it was tagged in. Sometimes it might have been tagged across two documents, though not the quote. The quote should only be tagged in one document, but it will tell you students. So this was tagged as students and interesting. This was only tagged as students, and this was only tagged as WMU. If you are interested in only seeing one type of highlight, right? Like say you're only interested in students, then you can click on students. You will only see the text tagged as students. If you're only interested in WMU, doing that same thing will only show you WMU. Interesting, same thing. You may also find that you have already a good idea of what you want to tag your documents, right? You've already thought about all the codes, in which case you can go in here and you can create a tag, and you can maybe say that this is instructors, any mention of instructors or faculty at WMU. You can save and close. And that way you don't actually have to tag anything in order to create a tag, right? So we can see all highlights again. We can see none of it's been tagged with instructors. But when I go back into the document and I click on a new document, and then I say, I just highlight this random sentence and I click on new highlight, then I see that instructors is now an available tag and I can save and close. Okay. So now navigating back to highlights, in addition to this being an area where you can create a new tag without actually having to highlight something beforehand to create it, this is also a great place where you can modify any tags. So let's say that I put in some things for instructor, but I'm not actually happy with it. By clicking edit, I can go ahead and change the name of the tag and the description of the tag. And again, just a reminder, the description is really a definition that you're using to guide your choice of what to tag. You may also find that this is a good place to merge tags, right? Maybe you have like another tag that is just called, let me do it this way. Let's create a tag called student. Any tags with student mentions. And so now all of a sudden you're left with students and student. And those are pretty much the same thing. So let's merge them together. By clicking on student, clicking on edit, you will see that you have the name and the description, but you can also merge it with any tag. And you can say that student merges into students. The trick here is that any information that we had within the tag that we're merging into another tag will be lost, right? It will transfer all the tags over, but it won't transfer the name or the description. So just be careful of which one you want to keep the information for, if that makes sense. So if I cancel this for just a second, if I look at students, it says students, any tag mentioning students, and student is any tags with student mentions. So if I go ahead and merge this into students and then press merge tags, you will see I'm left with students, and you still have the description that pertain to students rather than student. And if I had tagged anything under student, this number would have increased by that amount. Okay, so we can see all our highlights again by clicking all highlights. So some common questions that I'm often asked are, what documents can you import into this software? This software actually allows you to import a variety of documents. So if you look at the documentation, it allows you to import plain text documents, PDF, and Word documents. It does not allow you to import spreadsheets, or it will allow you, I think, to add like PowerPoint slides, but it might not end up looking the way you expect. So because this piece of software is very simple, you may find that you're running into issues if your document is not simple enough. So the documents that we're currently importing are actually pretty straightforward. They're just like going down. It's just like text that's been standardized. It's a plain text file. If you are tempted to be like, okay, this is a great source for tagging all my articles, and your article has 2 columns, it is going to read across the 2 columns, and so you're going to end up with gibberish. It will also not convert images into here, so you just have to be careful of what you're importing. You will notice that it might have some issues with special characters. Right here, this is a special character for the cent symbol, which is not very commonly used. And although we tried our best to try to get rid of this special character, it just ended up being like being gibberish. It usually does okay with other special characters that are commonly used, but just something to keep in mind. So I don't know how it would behave if you are dealing with like a foreign language. But for the most part, if you have a very straightforward document, like a PDF, a Word document, or a plain text file that just has text going from top to bottom in like one column, you should be fine. Okay, so far we've imported 2 documents and we've tried out tagging, whether tagging this way, where you add a new highlight and create a tag or select from the existing tags, or going into highlights and creating tags. Like I mentioned before, you can also import a codebook here. It only accepts a CSV document, so maybe you have all your codes already somewhere. This is a good way to do it. But you might find that you don't know what you actually want to tag. Like you just have a bunch of documents and you're just kind of scanning the information for interesting themes. You might find that this might be the better method for you to click and drag interesting things and themes and then code it and then revise those codes later on. Okay, so because we don't have all day to generate a bunch of codes, let's now create a new project with some more robust codes. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back into the home page and import a project file. Importing a project file will bring in all the documents that are already associated with that project and all the coding. So this will be a good example for us to kind of look at it together and make decisions on what we want to do with it. So let's go ahead and choose a file. I will choose the one that I downloaded, the 2025-05-09 Western Activist Final Tagging. It's in a SQLite 3 file because Taget uses a relational database underneath to associate different pieces of information. So because you are tagging a code that could exist across multiple files, it's just kind of relating that to multiple files. So it's using a relational database file. So we're going to click on that. We're going to select open. It will give us by default the project name and import the project. Make sure for this step that you are not trying to import a .txt file like the one that we downloaded, because it will not let you do that. It will give you nonsense results. Also make sure that under home, you are importing a project file and not creating a new project file. Okay, because if you create a new project file, you won't be able to import the file we just imported. Okay, so here we go. We have several documents and you see there's lots of highlighting in them. If we look in the highlights, we have a number of highlights. And like I said, we can either see all the highlights, or we can select maybe we're only interested in student issues and we just want to see this view. Now we're going to talk about exporting and revising our codes. So there are a few different ways to export information out of Taget. The first one is if we decide to export this view, we will get information that is just the entire document with the parts tagged that we're interested in. And the way we do that is that Taget has an export this view functionality, and you are getting exactly what you are seeing. So you need to make sure that you've actually clicked into what you are hoping to export so you can see it and so you can export the correct thing. So if I went and I clicked into highlights and I wanted to export this, I export a highlight, I'd only be exporting the document view because that's what is previewing right now. So we'll start off with documents, export this view, and we can export it into an HTML, docx, or PDF format. Let's export it into a PDF. If I open it up, it has information like the exact document we just looked at. And then we have the text that we highlighted and the specific tag. If we have multiple tags, it will separate them out by commas. You might want this type of view if you are maybe printing something out or have it for your records, or you're bringing it with a meeting and you just want to talk about the differences and what you found. So that is one option. Okay. The other thing that you may have noticed, just as a detour, is that the formatting looks a little bit different in this the PDF that I just exported compared to the original document. In fact, you will find that any sort of formatting you have done before you import it into TagGAT might look a little bit different. So you might find that, like I put in a single space between this the title of the Western activist and then the title of the article, but it looks like I have 3 spaces. So formatting can change a little bit. It can look a little bit different on the platform. So just something to keep in mind. And there's not really a way to fix this. Okay. The second option for exporting things is exporting only codes. So the way we do that is we can go into highlights and see all highlights, and we can export to this view as an Excel document, for example. And when I open it up, I can enable editing, and you will see that you have the ID of your document, you have the document name, the tag of your code, and then the entire sentence that you tagged. So this is my preferred way to export things because it lets you kind of see everything in context. This is exporting all the highlights. You may also choose this for a specific subset of a highlight. I'm not really sure why you would do that. Maybe you only want to export civil rights, and then you can export this view the same way. Or you may choose to export all of them separately and just have them at different spreadsheets. That's your prerogative, right? Maybe you found that you tagged a bunch of things, but you're only interested in one different tag type. But this is just the way that I would select all the highlights and export all of them, and then you can just delete something, or you can split it off into sheets, or you can sort it. And that way you don't have to worry about the rest of the highlights. That would be my preference. The other thing that we are exporting that you will find to be of interest is exporting your codebook. So again, the codebooks are the descriptions of all the tags that we put in. That was under highlights. So if we click edit, you can see this text. This will be part of the codebook. So if I go into export codebook and I export it as, I can export it as different things. I can export it as like a PDF, right? If I export it into a PDF, it looks very similar to when I exported things like the entire manuscript, right? It has the code book, it has the name of the tag, how many highlights, and the description of it. Or I can export this as an Excel or a CSV, and you'll have to rename it. It gives it default names, very helpful. But it looks like this, where, oh, it didn't actually do what I wanted it to do. Oh, because because remember how I told you that it doesn't. Let's try this again. So let's download this as a CSV. Let's do codebook 3. There we go. Okay, so you have the tag, so it tells you what it was tagged by, like what the tag was named. It tells you the description of the tag, and then it gives you the number of the highlights. So how many times the code was tagged within your documents. And this can be very helpful when you're comparing information. If you are working, is just you, this might be enough information to make some decisions about changes, right? You can use this document, which has your ID, your document, your tag, and your content, and look at these definitions, and you can make some decisions with just one person. If there is more than one person working on tagging, I would suggest um, working on two separate projects, especially if all you're doing is exploratory tagging, which means just kind of going in and highlighting things and tagging them. And so if you are working on two different projects, you are going to export this information, right? And then you'll have two different spreadsheets. You can add a column and then you can add your initials in this leftmost column and then combine the spreadsheets together and then sort it so that it is very clear of who coded what. The problem with people simultaneously coding within Taget is if we were both logged in, you and I, the viewer, hello, then I coded this sentence and then you coded this sentence. On the back end, it would actually look like only one person was coding it. So you wouldn't know who coded what, which is why I think with two people, maybe have two separate projects, do the coding, compare your codes, and then maybe work together on the same project to finalize your codes. Okay, so before I proceed with preparing results in Excel, I'm just going to go through some frequently asked questions, things that I've been asked all the time running this workshop. So, is there a way, Daria, to change the color of these tags? You see they are yellow. No, unfortunately, there's not a way to change the color of the tags. They're always just going to be yellow. Like I said, you can hover over them to see what has been tagged, if it's one tag or two tag, or you can click into them to see what's been tagged, if it was double tagged. But you can't change the color. The color we can change within Excel, and I'll show you how to do that shortly. Is there a way to do subtags? No, unfortunately, there is not a way to do subtags. So, like tagging a different theme, but you can use manually do subtags by using a delimiter like a colon to help you differentiate similar types of tags. So within here, we have something like student issues colon disagreement, student issues colon involvement. All of these refer to the sub-arching tag or code of student issues, and our subheading is disagreement, involvement, representation rights. And if we have a structure like this, we can then use Excel or Google Sheets or OpenOffice or whatever program you like to use to split those off into separate columns. How do I collaborate with others on the same document? You go into project info and you manage your collaborators, add your collaborator. Keep in mind, if both of you are coding within the same document, they will show up as if only one person is coding. So keep that in mind, especially if you want to compare codes across collaborators. Do I need to do anything special with transcript structure before importing into Taget? No, you do not need to do anything special. If you're thinking about timestamps, you can retain the timestamps. There probably won't be an issue with them as a special character. I would just suggest that you keep your documents consistent so it's easy to navigate through all of them. And also, I've been asked, Daria, Taget has such low functionality. It's going to be so tedious to find all the things I'm looking for. I'm looking for so many things, and it could show up 50 times within the document. Is there a way to automatically code it? No, unfortunately. Taget is a very basic piece of software. It will get you in and out, right? It will let you do things right from the onset without having to learn the software, but that also means that you have to do a lot of things manually. However, I will say that if you are interested in something, like maybe I'm interested in students, right? Within this document and any mention of students, I can actually just leverage the functionality of the browser. I can do Control F and I can put in student. And then I have 54 instances of students and I can navigate down the document and decide what I actually want to tag. I will still have to go in and be like, highlight the sentence that the student is in and create a new highlight and select, for example, student issue rights, right? In order to account for it. But it will give you kind of like a shortcut in terms of like I may have missed something. Other programs will do this for you automatically. However, by reading through the document and reading through the word in context, you are making a conscious decision whether or not to include something within your tags. And that can be a really good thing because sometimes things might be tagged that actually you find out have nothing to do with what you were interested in. And you would have to make that determination after it's been already coded, whereas here you can do it before it's been coded. Okay. So now we're going to go into the bonus part of this workshop, which is how do we leverage Excel with our exported information? So we've exported all this information. We can't work with it in TAGAT. TAGAT does not support analysis. So what do we do next? Okay. So the first thing that we just talked about is how do you tag subheadings, right? Or do subtags? And we said we can use like a colon to separate headings out, and then we can split them out within Excel. How do we do this? Okay, so the first thing that we want to do in preparation for this is I'm going to insert a column between the column C tag and column D content. The way I'm going to do that is I'm highlighting all column D by running my cursor over to the column D to when it becomes a black arrow, right-clicking on it and clicking insert. This will give me a single column. The reason I'm doing this is because we're going to be using a text wizard to separate the words based on the colon. And what it does once it separates, it moves the information into the column to the right of the original information. So it will be within this first cell, it will be student issues will stay in column C and rights will go into column D. And anything that, like, if this content was still in column D, it would just overwrite it. So make sure you have blank columns. Make sure you have as many blank columns as you have delimiters. In this case, I have one delimiter, but if you decided to do 5 subheadings, there's no restrictions on how many subheadings you can do. You will make sure to have at least 5 or 6 blank columns. You can always delete blank columns if you find out you don't need them. Next, I'm going to go ahead and highlight column C. I'm going to navigate over to the top menu into the Data tab, and I'm going to click Text to Column. This is the Text to Column wizard. We are going to click Delimited is how we want to split up our text. You can also click Fixed Width. This works very well if you have, like, in your column, the first 5, there's 5 characters, and then you have 7 characters and then 5 more. And they're all like that, all down the column, because then you can separate it up by its width, by the amount of characters. Because we have a varying amount of characters, we want to separate by delimiter. So we have delimited, we're going to click on Next, and then under delimiter, we're going to change from tab to other, and we're going to put in a colon. From here, you can see this preview of what this looks like, and you can see that there is a line added between the 2 headings, and it all looks good. So now we're going to select Finish, and once we select Finish, we have our tag, and then we have our sub tag, we can name it, and we have things separated out. Okay, the next thing that you might find that you're interested in doing is conditional highlighting. So conditional formatting. So highlighting with different colors. That is kind of based on the question. If you had the question, can I use different colors for tagging? This is where we're going to use different colors for tagging. So let's go ahead and do that within the tags column. We're going to go and under the data heading, select sort. Oh, not sort. Go under the home heading and select conditional formatting. We're going to highlight cell rules. and we're going to highlight text that contains. And from here, we can put in anything we're interested in. So we can put in civil rights, and I can put in the whole thing, civil rights, or I can just put in civil, because I know for me, civil only appears within civil rights. And then I can go ahead and click to change the formatting. I can change to custom format, which will let me choose any color I want. You can even change the font or the border, but I'm just going to go into fill and choose a color, press OK, and press OK again. And I can repeat this as many times as I want. So select it with the column selected, conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, text that contains student with custom formatting. I'm going to have it with orange and press OK. Okay. So now that I've highlighted all the things I'm interested in, I'm going to select all my data. So I can do that two ways. I can either do Control A, which will select my data range, or I can navigate over to where you see there's like column A and row 1. There's like a half of there's like a triangle at the bottom half of this square. And if I click on it, it will select the entire sheet. So whichever one you'd like, that works for me. Then navigate over to the Data tab and click on Sort. And from here, make sure that My Data Has Headers is checked marked, or else it's going to sort your headers and you will have a bad day. So we're going to sort by tag, and by default, it sorts by cell values, so like alphabetically. But you can also sort by cell color. And then I can sort by maybe orange on top, and then I can add another level and select by tag, cell color, blue underneath that. And then I'm going to add another level, and I'm going to sort by tag, and then just sort the rest alphabetically. I can change the order of these at any point. Like if I click on this second one and I want to move it up, I can use these arrows to move it up. And then when I press OK, it will sort it for me. You will see now that all your blue tags are on top. You see all your student issues are in the middle. You have then everything else sorted alphabetically. Let's say that I'm interested in knowing how many tags I have for civil rights. How do I do that? How do I know how many tags I have? Well, we downloaded the code book, right? So I can say, hey, civil rights has 20 tags. However, if I misplaced my code book or if I made changes, the way that I can do that really simply is, I mean, you can either look, I guess, at the numbers. So this is number 2 and it goes to number 21. And so you know that 21 minus 2, right? Or you can decide that you can select this range, and then if you look down at the status bar, you will have the count, and you will see that it is 20. This is kind of hard to see, I apologize, but if you go down below where your sheet is, you will see a count displayed. You can do this with longer ranges as well. Like you can click to the first cell of that range, navigate down to the last one, and select Shift and hold it down before you click the last one, and it will select the entire range for you. And you can do that. You could also do a pivot table, right? You can select Insert, Pivot Table, select a table or range, make sure that this range is selected and that you're placing it in a new workbook, and press OK. And from here, you can drag and drop everything that you're interested in. We're interested in tag. We're dragging it into columns, and we're also dragging tag into values, and it will give you a count for each of these tags. There is also a way to use COUNTIF formulas. If you are interested in learning more about COUNTIF formulas, I'm not going to cover that today. please check out my workshop, Introduction to Data Analysis Using Excel. There's a recording available on YouTube. It will walk you through how to use that formula. It essentially does the same thing as a pivot table where it does a count. And it can be really powerful because maybe you want to tag civil rights and then have a subtag, right? So you could do that same thing with a pivot table. I'm not going to go through it anymore today. But those are some tools available for you. Feel free to also check out the slides. The slides will have screenshots. So if I go back to and actually access the slides, I'm going to go ahead and open it. You will see splitting columns, and it has information on how to actually split out the columns and with instructions and some alt text to help get you started with sorting, built-in functions, and it will go through COUNTIF formulas as well. Okay, great. So we're almost at the end of this time. So I just want to go through a few next steps. So if you need additional support for your project, I would strongly suggest you reach out to our digital humanities or digital projects librarian, Amy Bacco. She is great if you have questions about digital humanities tools and concepts, any support around oral history or with using a platform such as Scalar, reach out to her. She's a great resource. If you would like to map your information, right? Maybe you had all this coding that you did and then you changed it to quantitative data, you can reach out to Jason. Jason creates fantastic maps. You give him the data, he creates the maps for you for your posters, your books, your presentations, personal use for classroom use. Feel free to make an appointment with him. We talked about this really briefly. If you are interested in getting more support for like finding literature on gaps, so to get started with your research, or maybe coding your articles that have multiple columns that aren't compatible with Taget, but would work well with something like Zotero or Mendeley, reach out to your liaisons. Here they all are. Please talk to them. They would love to hear about your project. They'll help you find your literature, help you figure out writing, help you figure out class assignments, help you with your literature searches. And also, come talk to me if you would like additional help with your project. I am here to offer personalized support if you're writing a data management plan, trying to figure out your project workflow, need help finding data to do your analyses, would like to be like, hey, Daria, I set up this structure and it's not working. Come talk to me. It can help you with depositing your data after your research study is done, help you with documentation, help you figure out storage. And if you don't know who to talk to, come talk to me. I will make sure you're connected to the right person. Also, you have slides, like I said, tinyurl.com/WMU-Taget. That's where you'll find all the files we went through today, and also the slides with the tutorials. All my data workshops are available on YouTube as recordings, so feel free to check those out. I always have workshops coming up. I have some coming up this semester. I have some coming up next semester. Go check those out. You can sign up also for the library's listserv if you would like to be informed. And also, feel free to let me know what you thought of this workshop. Did it help you? Is there something you would like me to cover in the future? I read all your feedback and I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say. But thank you again so much for your time. Thank you for being here. I hope you learned something that you could take with you, that you could apply to your project, even if it's just one change, even if it's just trying something out. And don't hesitate to contact me if you need anything more. I hope to see you around. Take care.